So I told him, if you want me to stay here, I need a storefront, right? Because we've been at this house, nothing wrong with it, right? But I want to move up to the next level.
What do you look for in people that you hire, and where are you finding these employees?
I was hiring a lot on skills, and what I noticed later on, it was just more about attitude. What's your favorite store? They name, let's say Walmart. Okay, and then what would you do to make that store better?
You're kind of screening for, like, are they entrepreneurial? Can they take ownership? Can they take accountability? And I think as you're building a team, the more people like that you can find, the better.
Learn as much from us that you can. We're going to learn from you. And hopefully one day you can then build your company. That's always the goal that we have here.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Superpro podcast, the heartbeat of home service excellence. I'm Roland Leitenberg. I'm your host. I'm also the co-founder of Housecall Pro, and I'm an advocate for all the hardworking pros out there helping make our homes better, safer, and more comfortable. Through Housecall Pro, I've had the privilege and honor of supporting hundreds of thousands of pros just like you, empowering you guys to achieve more, stress less, and redefine success in our industry. Today, I'm super excited. I want to welcome Jay to the show. Jay is the vice president at Frontier Air Conditioning that's been delivering exceptional HVAC service for 18 years with a team of 30 employees, 15 service vehicles, a goal of $6 million in revenue this year. Frontier Air Conditioning has earned the prestigious Carrier President's Award for 5 consecutive years. Join us as we dive into Jay's insights on scaling operations. We'll talk a little about AI. We're going to talk a little bit about like management, checklists, Housecall Pro, all kinds of cool stuff. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thanks for having me, Roland. I really appreciate it. I'm excited.
No, cool. So Frontier's been around for a little bit. Tell me about the story. When did you join Frontier? What's your kind of professional journey with the company?
For sure. Yeah, it is, first and foremost, a family-owned company. My dad owns a company. I've been doing it since I was very, very young. I was replacing, we did refrigeration. We did, when you're starting off as a business, you always do you do everything that you can, right? Because the more income that you get from different places, the better off you're going to be. So I was with him since I can remember, young boy, 9, 10, 11 years old, and was with him in the truck. I'd go after school, help him out until 11 o'clock at night, and that was just an everyday thing. So I was very much on the field for a long time. He was working at a country club for about 20 years as a maintenance manager. Wow. And what happened was why he decided to make Frontier was we didn't have enough money to put my sister through college. So he kind of, I can do HVAC because I know HVAC, and he started the business in 2006 in October. And then I went ahead and joined back. It was always my dream, but I want to be more on the operations side. That was always my goal. I was in the field right when I graduated high school. I graduated with the trades, an associate's. At that time, I still had it in high school. And then I went ahead and finished my business administrative with a community college. And I was going to school, working for him, and then helping out with the company. And then I told him, this was around 2013. We were working out of the house at the time. So I told him, if you want me to stay here, I need a storefront, right? Because we've been at this house, nothing wrong with it, right? But I want to move up to the next level. And I told him, if you don't build a storefront, I cannot help you, right? I want to move up to the next level. And for that, I need a storefront. Because what was happening was this. When I was trying to scale the company, I'd have interviews with administrators, salespeople. They would come up to the house. I'd see them through the window, and they'd drive off. That was just my life. And I was 21 at the time. So I was learning all these things very, very fast. And he went ahead and built a storefront. We moved here where we're at right now in 2016. Been here since, and I've been running the company, I'd say, for the last 8 years, just full on running it in the trenches. I've written every job description or did every position, grew it, and just in a very, very nice place right now. It was tough to get here, but everything that we did to end up here was a whole reason. So that's my backstory, but installing, warehouse, everything, I did it all. And I love my industry for sure.
That's awesome. And so you've obviously hired a bunch of people, 30 people. What do you look for in people that you hire, and where are you finding these employees?
Before I did start, I was hiring a lot on skills. And what I noticed later on, it was just more about attitude. So if they have both skills and attitude, then they're going to be a great fit for the company. But right now, I do get a lot of applications for the van wraps. So I do have always hiring on the van wraps. And today, actually, we had 2 people apply because of the van wraps. So our website has it, and they have a jot form also that, so whenever they're calling into the office, what the dispatch will do is they'll send them a jot form, and then they'll fill it out on their own time, and it gets sent over to me. So most of it is van wraps, the website, jot form, and then just referrals from our employees, because no one wants to be embarrassed if someone didn't work for them, right? Or if they, we don't want them to come on board and they make them look bad. So I think also one of the best ones is just, who needs a job that you already have that's working for you, and how we can bring them into the team.
No, I think that's awesome too. And when it comes to employee referrals, you're right. If you refer someone to work for the company, there's this extra incentive to do really good, especially if it's a place that you love. And I feel like, as you are building a team, you're building a sports team. And if you're able to recruit the right types of talent, especially talent that has to rely on each other, work with each other all day together, referrals is a great way. Obviously, the van wraps and just having these 15 vehicles out there driving around everywhere too, people see it and they're like, oh yeah, I work for Frontier, or you work for Frontier, and it becomes like top of mind. And so I like the funnel that you built, going to the website, going to the job form, building all of that is something that you constantly have to be recruiting. What are some traits really that you look for? Are they like, what's your favorite interview question?
So I think, especially now with how things have changed, just the way they present themselves. I think that's one of the things that we, in our trades, definitely we give a little bit of, I guess you'd say, maybe we're a bit more forgiving because, we're the blue collar worker, right? So, a lot of times they won't come in with a suit and tie, but they've had several people come in like that and they've blown us away. But I think just the way they greet themselves, the way they sit down, the way they look, looking at us directly. So it's all of these basic interview things that we ask for. But I think the specific questions that I find a lot is, what's your favorite store? They name, let's say Walmart. Okay, and then what would you do to make that store better? And I kind of see whether that's customer service, pricing, maybe self-checkout. I have one of the new guys that we just hired. He told me that he prefers to not have self-checkout. Didn't elaborate why, but he says, I don't want self-checkout. Okay, well, that's odd, but I prefer self-checkout. And that's one of the questions I do ask a lot is, what's your favorite store and how would they make it better if they could? And also, if they weren't doing this, what type of business would they open?
Ooh, I like that. That's a great golden nugget you just said, because you're kind of screening for, like, are they entrepreneurial? Can they take ownership? Can they take accountability? And I think as you're building a team, the more people like that you can find, the better. So I hope that the folks that are listening write that question down the next time they are in the interview process.
Yeah, definitely. Always wanting more for themselves, So our goal is, hey, you know what? Learn as much from us that you can, and we're going to learn from you. And hopefully one day you can then build your company. That's always the goal that we have here.
Yeah. So one thing that's really stands out with your company is you guys are just crushing it in the service agreements / memberships, depending on how you call it in different industry. But like, you guys are just doing really well there. Why is that so important for your business, and how are you driving that? How are you driving all the employees with that kind of focus? I think we call it the CKC. So we rebranded it late last year. So we were not doing very well with it, like we wanted to, and we just thought about, okay, well, how does our Frontier and the Cowboy that we have, how can we all tie it in together? So we came up with a team, and then let's come up with another name. That was the Cowboy Cool Club. So everyone wants to be part of the Cowboy Cool Club, or it's a membership. So we don't market it as a service agreement anymore. We just market it as a membership or an agreement, or just a membership. And we call it the club as well. So it's the CKC. So we brand it on our vans, CKC, on our hats. I have a hat here, but on the hat, on the brim, we have CKC on it. So customers will say, what is CKC? And then we ask them to join. Good. Yes. So I love that. That's subtle, but a really great way to get a customer to ask about it and present it as like, oh yeah, it's this, without coming across as you're the one that's bitching it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one thing that we changed, just the rebranding of it, just a little bit more interesting as far as the naming. And we have a sign-off form. So after every single call that the guys go to, there's a form of them declining the membership. Okay, this is what you can get with it. If you don't want it, not a problem. But here's just if you can just sign it, declining it. That way we can go ahead and report this to the office, right? It's a better scripting, right? We just tie them into, hey, this is where you can benefit from it. Everything I did today, plus you can get this in the membership. And if they decline it, not a problem. Then we report it to the office. So if they're running 5 calls, again, the hardest thing was just getting the customers or the technicians to ask the question, because it's just, and they get a commission off it as well. But one of the hardest parts is just getting them to ask the question. And if you have a form about it, then it makes it that much easier for them to ask the question. Hey, you want to be part of the Cowboy Cook Club? Well, what is that? Here's everything you get with it. And then it's $19 a month or $229 a year. And 2 out of 5 calls a day we're closing it. And with the rebranding and with the new form that we're doing now.
I really like that. That's a really subtle, in the software world, it's called like a UX pattern, right? Which is like a user experience pattern. But you're literally asking folks to decline joining the club versus the reverse, which is like, hey, do you want to join it? So there's a different mentality. People don't want to lose things, versus, what to gain. And so work on that mentality is really neat. And I think for folks that are out there that are kind of struggling selling memberships, selling service agreements, and getting that on there, it's such an important part of your business to build that recurring relationship with your customers. You work so hard to get them. You work so hard to acquire them. The money that you spend, you want to keep them in your family, and in your company forever, because then you get the LTV, the lifetime value of that customer. Because at some point, 8, 10, 15 years down the road, there's going to be a replacement there, and you want to make sure you're the company that they call.
Agree. Yeah, and then just that service agreements change our company. If we were not here, we wouldn't be here without the service agreements. The Cowboy Club, it changed the way the technicians look at us, the installers, the office, because we have work year round. And that's the struggle for any HVAC company is, we're about to go into our shoulder season. Now we have no more work with a CKC. We don't have to worry about it no more. So that stress of the winter, it's not going to be as busy, of course, in Texas, but we have work for the guys, and we sold tons of equipment this winter, January, February, March, because of the CKC. Oh, and at first it's like, okay, all of a sudden, hey, we're doing this. This was the whole point, and now we're actually closing on these sales because they already know us. So it's much more. It's much bigger than just the $19 a month.
That's right. And you're obviously managing all this through Housecall Pro, so it's easy to follow up with and see who has these memberships and the billing and all those other kind of components. Because once you get thousands of those, that would be a lot to keep track of with just old school pen and paper.
Yes, cannot do without the portal. The portal is an everyday thing for us.
Oh yeah, for sure. What are some other things that you would tell young Jay, not 10 or 11-year-old Jay, riding in the back of the truck with your dad, but Jay just like coming into the business, fresh out of college and your learnings. What would you give your younger self advice, young Jay? What do you tell him to do?
I'd say take less money home and hire more managers.
Okay.
So let's say I don't want to, because I think pride was one of them. But hey, you know what? I'm going to hire a manager to help me out. That way I can focus on scaling the company. But what happened was I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but we were just so busy doing everything we had to do to keep the company running and then growing. What happens is we're falling short on the businesses that are further along than us. That'd be on the operations side. So what I would have told myself is, hey, hire a manager quicker. That way we can focus on scaling the company, not the everyday. Now I'm working on a weekly, monthly basis. But before it was like every hour was just something different. So right now the way we're structured is it's been taken care of. Everything's fine. Every operations are running by the managers. But if I would have done that 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, to where we did a restructure about 4 years ago when it comes to that, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we would have been in a much better place right now because I have that much more time ahead of the competition.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes a really scary leap for people to make when they're delegating off, things that they think only they can do or that they can do better. How do you tell yourself that? And maybe this is the way you tell, but like, how do you tell yourself it's okay if someone else can do it, even if they can't do it as good as I could have?
I look at everything as hourly rate. I
Oh,
think
okay. That's a good tactic.
so. If I'm working on this task and my hourly rate is whatever, based on what I know because I've been doing this my entire life. Um, if I'm going to spend 2 hours doing something, it's going to cost the business this amount of money when I can delegate it to someone that's making, less than me, do the same task, and they're doing it. Maybe they're doing it 10 minutes. Let's say it takes 20 minutes in order to do it. They're doing it in 40. They're doing it in 20, 30, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they're doing 10 things right and then one thing wrong, then still, if you do the math, it's still better off to hand it over to somebody else. I think the hardest thing was, I wouldn't, don't know if it was too much handing it over to somebody, but when you know a lot about something, right? Like you, so much about software, right? You can see things that other people cannot see. It's right in front of you, and you're seeing whatever that you're seeing, and hey, you're like, I can see what's going on with that, and that doesn't look right to them. They don't see it, but because we've been in the trenches, we've felt the pain, so we know what that looks like when something's about to go wrong. But that comes with experience and wisdom. So I think if we want to get to a better place, you need to delegate as much as possible to other people that you can delegate, and then vice presidents, presidents focus on the bigger picture, because if you're not, someone else is. So another company is looking at the big picture, and you always have to be gas on the pedal every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the golden nugget just to be extracted there for people that might not have written this down, but think about things as an hourly rate. And if you're doing something for 2 hours, what is it costing the business? What is it costing the business? Because you're not working on this other piece, which is the scaling piece, which is this like strategy, this bigger picture, the stuff that you can see that others can't. And even if someone takes 10 minutes longer, 20 minutes longer, their billable hourly rate is still significantly less than the value that you're adding in the company. So you're still coming out ahead, even if they take twice as long. And so I think that's where, being able to compartmentalize that a little bit. And then also I think there's like the ego component and the pride component you have to be able to set aside. If you can do those two things, you can get to the point where you feel comfortable building out a company and really scaling that.
Great.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, the operations tracking, the checklists, and things like that you put into place to help managers, meet their weekly goals. How do you run that? How did you build that? What are some tips you can give other companies that are been thinking about implementing something like that, but maybe haven't pulled the trigger?
For sure. Yeah. What we do every day is very similar. It's kind of cookie cutter. I mean, we sell a system, we install it, we register it, and then we collect, right? So a lot of what the brain, and that's what we've been focusing a lot. It takes more time than you think. That's something I'd say. So putting all the knowledge that we've acquired over the years of doing business, to put it on paper, it takes a long time. So what we do is we put the things that we wrote down, what takes the majority of our day. What's something that happens every single day? What are we dealing with on a daily basis? And how can we either automate that, or if not automate, create a checklist for it? So we're selling systems every single day. We're financing a majority of those systems. So what are the questions that my installation administrator has to have answered before she can proceed with the install? So, okay, well, who is the financing company? Are they the owner of the house? What financing rate did they choose? Is there a co-signer? Is the system like a burnout or early retirement? These are the measurements of the existing system. These are the measurements of the new system. Do we need someone else to go out there? So we have 2 checklists that are manual that are about 180 questions, which we've been trying to reduce. But when it comes to the most important things, because what we start to realize is there's so many variables, and it never ends. You can keep on adding to lists and lists until you end up with something that no one uses. Mm-hmm. So what we've done actually in the last couple of months is we reduced it to the most important thing, which is what's going to keep us from collecting on a job, what's going to keep us from, pissing off a customer because maybe the interest rate wasn't right, whatever. Have all those set to, okay, this is what the technician talked about with the customer. Then when we go back before we do the install, hey, I just want to be sure that this is everything that we're going to be doing. Any questions, yes or no? No? Okay, then we can move forward. But just keeping the technicians held accountable for filling out those lists, that way they can get the full commission as well. So if the commission didn't, if they didn't finish the checklist, then commission gets removed, right? And we play with it here and there, but hey, this is required to make the commission because it can snowball into pretty, if a customer wanted this interest rate and then we install it and they got this interest rate, that's a big deal. It's not an easy thing. to fix, and it's just we wanted that is held by the checklist. I learned one thing a while back. Even pilots still have checklists. They're filling out the same checklist pre-flight every single time. So I'm like, if pilots do that, guys, we have to do it as well. That's the thing I always tell them.
I love it. That's another great golden nugget there, because you're right. Pilots have thousands and thousands of hours, but they still use the same checklist, same pre-flight, post-flight, and they go through it. Because you know what? You have to run that process to make sure you're not missing anything. And I think too, as you start bringing new people in, or co-pilots, right? Then that's a really good habit for them to build as well, and makes it a lot easier to manage so many folks. And I think if you don't build a process and a system around it, it's going to be really hard to enforce that as you start to grow, because the problems are only going to get worse. And you're not going to have the time of the day to be able to fix all the things like you might have would have if you were a little smaller.
Exactly. Great.
So at what point, you came in, at what point were you like, hey, we need something to track all this. We need a field service management system. We need a CRM. We need something like Housecall Pro. Like, what was the point? Like, what happened when you're like, all right, I'm going on the hunt?
Yeah. So before I was using mHelp Desk, and there was a decision to be made. So I forgot what the reason was. I've been with Housecall Pro for about 5 years, and I remember going to one of the first. I think it was in Austin. I think it was like 2018, 2019. To where there was a stage there. It was at a hotel. It was like this meetup that we had did in the very beginning, and that's when I was kind of being onboarded when it all started. Us in our new journey, right? So to me, very similar to how we had to move out of the house to get to the next level, we had to do the same thing with our software, right? Housecall Pro, our CRM is everything. Every single day we're logged in. I have 12 computers here. Every computer has Housecall Pro on it. So yes, it's important that what we do, how we track everything, can keep up with the speed at which we are moving, right? mHelp Desk wasn't the fit, and I did a lot of research. I mean, there's so many softwares around, and it's just pros and cons. I mean, that's why I do really everything is, what are the pros and cons of having this? And it all ended up being to Housecall Pro. It was going to fit my budget, what exactly I needed at the time of business, and me as a millennial, I look at, it's probably weird, but I look at how often things get updated. So I would look at how often the app would get updated on the App Store, and that will determine how fast you guys are moving. So that's one thing I consider a lot. And, now going on 5 years, it's changed everything if you don't have a CRM now, it's like you're kind of in the dark ages. If you don't have pictures on your way, who's going to your house, I mean, you need to get on it as soon as possible. And Housecall Pro does that. So if you're just starting off, that's where you need to be, because every other company already has a CRM to where they can tell you who's going, what time they'll be there, invoicing, payment through the credit card, payment through ACH, has everything that we need. And right now, we basically crumble if we didn't have a CRM like Housecall Pro. Yeah,
I feel like at a certain stage, it's something that customers expect. And we're still in the early stages where, I still say 80% of companies don't have something in place. But by having something in place too, you're already starting to deliver the experience that makes it easier to sell higher end systems, a higher end service, because the customer is like, oh, wow, okay, I understand why this company is more expensive than the other one. They're more communicative. They do the on my way. They do the financing components, right? All of it is there. The digital invoices, being able to pay by credit card if they need to, the service agreements. I think at a certain point, I didn't even think about folks looking at how often we update the app. But I was just like, oh, how often do we do that? I'm just looking at it like, okay, here we go, 827, 820, 814, 86, 81, 723. So it's like, I don't know, it's 4 times. It's literally every single week, right? And so that's where making sure you're aligned with a company that's growing as fast as you are. You're making a bet on a horse, and it's a long-term relationship. And I think those are all things you should definitely consider for your business as you're looking at things.
Yeah, be serious about it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What do you think is the most underrated feature that Housecall Pro does? What do you think people don't talk enough about, or maybe is like so, I don't know, maybe simple or or small, but it adds like a ton of value, and it's just definitely underrated.
Because there's a couple of features I've been playing with recently, and one is the templates. So I was trying to figure out how can I use templates in my business, and I couldn't figure it out until just recently. So my job as the VP, right, is to look at everything that we do and how to minimize the steps it takes to do it, the failure rate, right? That's all I look at. And one of the things that was always complained every single week was, hey, the estimates, because we have it designed a certain way, it's going to be, okay, the system, where it's installed, what system, the Cowboy Cook Club, and then the warranty and accessories built in. So when the technicians have it on their phone, they're choosing it, but they have to choose the right sequence. That way to the customer, it's presented like this. So on the templates, they just choose, okay, we're doing a 2-ton AC. They choose the system that they want, and it gets pushed into the estimate. That way it's the same sequence. That way the installation administrators not having to change the sequence. So it's one less thing she has to do, and also an extension for the customer. So I think it's the templates, after understanding what they were really there for, changed it, because now the technicians, in a couple of clicks, they choose what they want, it presents it. When before, it's like, okay, service, and then where are these systems going, what type of warranty it has, what system, what accessories. So everything that the software can offer just to minimize the failure rate and how fast it takes to get from this step to another. I think that's one that's not talked about too much, that to me just it got me by surprise, and I'm excited. The guys they've been using it for the last 2 weeks now, and to think that's how we were doing things before, it's crazy, but it's helped us so much.
Yeah, I think, any single time you can like automate, template, checklist, like build that process, and you eliminate, technician failure rate, it's going to help. And you can't market a job template really easily, because you're like, how do you market a job template and like the value of it? But once you build it, and you build it for 80% of the stuff you do, then it's just going to save so much time. And if you think about how many single times people are adding a line item, adding another line item, that 10 minutes across 20 technicians every single day, that turns into real dollar savings. But it's definitely, that's the first time I heard that as an underrated feature, but it makes freaking total sense. What about something you wish you would have started the business with earlier in Housecall Pro? So when you first got it, obviously it was 5 years ago, so we didn't have all the features we have now, but what's something that, I think a lot of businesses, when they're first onboarding Housecall Pro, what should they do like right away that if you would have done, you would have been further along with your business?
I have to go through the service agreement portal, definitely. I wish I would have put more effort into it. I wish I would have rebranded it, because before we used to have, like, I think a lot of companies, right, like 6 different programs. The more you have, again, the more confusion. So we just did one program only. We did a rebrand of the name, and then one program only, and then did a lot of training on how the portal should work. So I think the sooner you get on Housecall Pro, understand how the portal works, and then have a system in place to where you're selling agreements, because that's what is going to keep your company relevant, and it's going to keep you busy during the shoulder season, and it's what's going to help you get paid to stay in the customer's door and keep the relationship building with them. So I'd say that would be the number one thing if I had to redo, is just focus on the agreement portal of it.
Yeah, I think because ultimately, like, every service business is a people business, and the value of your business is based upon your customer database. And, just servicing a customer once, like, doesn't really count. If you can continue to service the customer over and over and over again, that's recurring revenue from that customer. And all of a sudden you're turning from like a Blockbuster to more of like a Netflix type of a business. And like you said, sometimes, younger business owners like, man, like, how can I keep all of my people busy during the shoulder season? There's not enough to do. But if you've got all these agreements, you got to be running tune-ups, you got to be running checkups. And if you're just doing that, you can start to like fill in your schedule nicely. Not completely, but at least you can start to keep trucks moving, people doing things, and still generating new opportunities, because you never know when they're going to be in the house and something else that you can actually do like ends up happening. And if you're doing that on a continual basis, you're way more likely to catch it versus them being like, who do I call now, or where do I go? It's like, oh no, the Frontier guys, they were great last time and they're here now, let's just have them do it.
Yeah, and I don't really believe it until I saw it happen the last 2 years. The last 2 years I've seen the revenue, during our peak season, just revenue is up, right? You see the bar charts, you see the graphs. But now every year it's been more stabilized to where, okay, we have our peak season and it's not so like obvious. Now it's like, okay, it kind of goes up and then just like that during the slow season instead of just these huge drop offs because we're putting ourselves into the houses because of the agreements and we're selling. Again, if they don't have a new system, they don't need it, or they need new air duct, we have insulation, we have accessories. So there's a lot of stuff that they can purchase. Don't just be so fixated on the AC system itself.
Yeah. I can only imagine it'd be really difficult to build a business that only just does replacements, and then you only focus on that piece because there's so many other things that you can offer to the customer once you've built that customer trust. That is the hardest thing of like the entire process is acquiring that customer, winning their trust, and having them call you for anything that you have a service for. Let's talk a little bit about the community. You've been in the community for a while, the Facebook group. Why are you in it? What kind of value? Do you have any advice for new people that are joining the community?
What I like most about it is just because as business owners, we always want to grow ourselves, right? So we want to make sure that, hey, this is the vision that I have for the next 3 months, 6 and 12. So with how fast software updates, you guys need to be on the same because just as a business like you guys are, everyone's also doing the same thing to, hey, we got to get to the next level, right? To support our HVAC contractors and all the other contractors, right? So I think the amount of involvement that you put and care into what we think that we need, and I'm able to see it being built out in the timeline of and things I never thought about as a business owner, because you have people all the way from, let's say, on 100,000 in revenue, 200, all the way from, let's say, 15, 20 million. The way they look at things is very different from the way I look at things. So you have a community that can mend both what these guys are experiencing and then what these guys are experiencing to where, hey, this is what we need for our business. And I see a lot of stuff, ideas there in the group that, hey, I never even thought about that. But yes, I can see how that can be an issue if we were to make $2 million more revenue. So yeah, we need that as soon as possible because that's our goal is we want to get there. So by the time we get there, that's going to be in place to help us, achieve the next thing. So I think the positivity of the community, I think the newer generation, the new way of thinking helps a lot. And just constant back and forth communication. It can be tough, right? Because everyone wants to do something. Everyone wants it to be a certain way. But what's most important is that we're being heard because that's how all things are moving. And that, hey, there is a future to the people that are our backbone. You guys, you're supporting us. So I just want to focus on revenue and that you guys be the support system of our company. So love it.
Yeah, I love the way you put it because, in the communities, once you join, you've got the ability to float ideas with other pros out there and talk about things and other pros being like, oh yeah, I want to vote for that too. I could totally see how that's important for my business. And then as those things rank up, in our product backlog, we're like, all right, we got to go build this. One that just recently we released was like, pros would mistype like one letter in an email. And the invoice would bounce, but we didn't have a notification for that, and so pros would be like, well, why hasn't Jay paid me? Like, what's going on? What? And it just like maybe I put an extra L in your last name, or not enough L's or something. But that was a feature that just kept like, hey, can you build? Boom. And so we're like, all right, we've got to build a notification center, and each time the email bounces, boom, put a notification in there, so that way the pro doesn't have to go like 2 weeks later. It's like, why isn't this bill paid? It's like, oh, I fat fingered the keyboard. I don't know. I put in an extra letter. But there's lots of little things like that when you're building the software, you don't think about until your customers, our pros, right? The HVAC pros are like, oh, okay, yeah, I need this, and this keeps happening. And so that's why having that community and like everyone has a voice, give that feedback, put those pro votes in there. And if there's things that other people say that are a good idea, go support them or tell them like, nah, I don't need it, and that's okay too, right? Because not everyone needs all the things. Well, Jay, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Are there any last words you have to share with the audience here before we jump off? We're already well over the 30-minute mark.
For sure. I think with how fast business is moving, for anyone that's getting into the industry, it's an amazing industry. Definitely changed a lot the last couple of years from what we're used to. And I think what everyone needs to focus right now is on customer service, customer retention, employee retention. and then trying different ways to get in the customer's door. And if you don't have a CRM, definitely get one. Definitely jump on Housecall Pro, because again, I tell my dad this all the time. He's not here as much as I am, but me knowing what I know now, I need to stay on the front. That way I can be just kind of, I guess, bashing through everything, because if it's hard for me to keep up with what's going on with technology, with the world, and how people are interacting with everything, then my mind is gonna be fixed somewhere else, which means now I'm not focusing on what's happening in front of us, what's happening in the next 3 months. So I think if taking your business seriously, it's a beautiful trade. Get something that can track it, because the sooner that you jump on a CRM like Housecall Pro, then you start building your customer database. And then you start building your email marketing, SMS marketing. So there's a lot of connections with everything, but keep track of your clients. Make sure you let them know that, hey, I know it's been a year. By the way, I still exist. Email marketing, SMS campaigns. There's so much that it can do. And the sooner that you implement that, the further along you'll be. So again, hopefully make your dreams come true, which is run a successful trades business. So that's all I have to say.
Oh man, so many great tips in there. Jay, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing that with our full audience. And for everybody else, stay tuned next week for another episode on the Superpro podcast. Signing out. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Superpro podcast is brought to you by Housecall Pro, the leading platform for the home service industry. Housecall Pro streamlines your workflows and simplifies everything from scheduling and dispatching to communication and billing. Unlock the full potential of your home service business with Housecall Pro. Work smarter and more efficiently with streamlined workflows and detailed analytics. Win more business and serve your customers well, every single time. Join more than 40,000 home service pros who have already revolutionized their businesses. Work smarter with streamlined workflows, get organized with centralized information, and scale your business your way. Learn more at housecallpro.com.